taken from somebody else by force. Does that sound familiar? It's called tax dollars.
This is not a new story. I mean, go back to 2005, we were talking about this. Their cash burn rate was about $2 billion a quarter then. This is not a new story. And actually, the headline on the Business Week article in December of 2005 was, "What if we let GM fail?" I mean, we talk about slow and painful death here.
John, here's my argument about
We're not letting GM fail. It's the government, and the government is, instead of letting GM fail, is punishing regular Americans to make them pay for GM by force.
Right. Bankruptcy is a good thing. It's the market's way of stopping scarce resources from being wasted and squandered. If General Motors is combining the factors of production, which are land, labor, and capital, and destroying value in the process, we need to put a stop to it.
They should fail. Exactly.
We need to put an end to it so that we can more productively utilize those resources.
Here's my argument about force, John Tate. Consumers have decided that they don't want to buy their products for whatever reasons. Investors have decided that they don't want to invest in Detroit for reasons that we all understand. But the Congress has decided it will by force take money from us and make us unwilling consumers and unwilling investors by giving them $4 billion here, $17 billion there, and God knows what by Easter.
You're exactly right. That's what Congress has turned into, taking by force. That's what they're good at. And that's why groups like Campaign for Liberty and other groups need to get active and make these guys pay for forcing this on us.
The thing for politicians is they can point to the money that GM gets and say, you see, we gave this money to GM
and we saved your job.
Saved these jobs. But what you don't point to are who got thrown out of work, what jobs never got created because capital was taken from another part of the economy and given to General Motors. And if we allow the market to allocate our capital, it'll be used more efficiently and we'll all be better off because we'll have more productive jobs, not phony jobs.
And another important reason GM needs to go out of business is there are too many cars in this country. During the Fed's artificial boom, we had too many malls, too many houses, too many cars, too many commercial office buildings, a lot of stuff, and we need to have fewer of these,
And the crazy thing is,
the fact
of the matter is,
don't need so many cars.
And they want
the fact of the matter is, Peter, that in 2009, J.D. Powers and Associates said specifically, regardless of who the car maker is, people are going to buy less cars, and we're looking at numbers we haven't seen since 1982.
We're loaded up with cars.
Now, I'm not finished.
Go ahead.
And we also, though, they're using the fear tactic on us yet again in another industry. So this fear tactic that you were talking about, that we need to pass the stimulus bill, the omnibus spending bill, they're using it again in the auto, saying the systemic loss of jobs in the suppliers, in everything, will cripple the economy. We need to help them.
John Tate, what can we do about the fear tactic? George Bush used the fear tactic to shred the Constitution, to get the Patriot Act passed, the Military Commissions Act passed, a variety of other statutory provisions which would purport to allow the government to violate our natural rights and our rights protected by the Constitution. Barack Obama has used the fear tactic to assault the free market, to mortgage the future. Tim Geithner even said last night to change capitalism as we have known it. What can we do when the fear tactic prevents Congress from debating, permits Mrs. Pelosi to sneak things in the bill that even her own Democratic colleagues didn't even know were there? What politically can be done to prevent this or diminish it or slow it down?
Well, the fact is, in politics, fear sells. Fear is what works. And what we need to do from the outside is make these politicians fear us, fear the American people. We need to make them fear their reelection, the one thing they care about more than anything else. We need to put pressure on them. We need to let them know that, in fact, the American people do care about these issues. We are furious, and we are going to act based on how they vote.
How does a mature economist like you, Peter Schiff, view the absurd shenanigans and manner in which every aspect of our lives are regulated by people who make decisions just because they think certain portions of the electorate want it, who are willing to violate almost the laws of nature by their utter disregard for basic economics 101, and who don't even read the legislation that they force on the rest of us?
Well, I mean, I don't. How do I like it? I mean, there's
No, no, you don't like it. How do you look at it? I mean, how do you accept it? How do you tolerate it? It's antithetical from your end of the world, where you study everything in detail before you make a decision.
Look, I understand what's going on. Again, they're all looking out for their political self-interest. I mean, they couldn't care about the economy. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they want to get reelected. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to take out that frustration because the politicians that have bought and paid for so many voters, the money they're taking away from us, they're doling out to people that they know are going to support their reelection. And it's so hard to vote them out when they have these entrenched factions that are going to get out the vote and vote to return them to office because they see their reelection as their ticket to more from the public trough.
Lew Rockwell, there's a principle of law that lawyers look to called the intent of the drafter. And when lawyers and judges are trying to figure out what the drafter, the author of a statute meant when he wrote it, you sometimes look at legislative history. What was said about it in committee hearings? What was said about it on the floor of the House? What was said about it on the floor of the Senate? What was said in other communications? And there's a famous dissent by Justice Scalia, and I don't agree with a lot of what Justice Scalia has written, but I agree with this, and it was unchallenged by the rest of the court. And that is this: we should never look to legislative history. It doesn't matter what they say about anything. They only vote for one reason, and that's to stay in office. So who cares about what the stated reason is?
Well, of course, I think that's right. They do care about staying in office. They care about all the emoluments they may get in addition to their salaries. But I must say, it's why I think we can't find our salvation in Washington, D.C. in any sense. I think it's a sink of corruption. It's maybe the source of our troubles, or the center of our troubles, if not the source. But I think that I think we have to look to the American people. We can't look to anybody in Congress, with the one exception of Ron Paul.
John Tate, yesterday, the president said he's in favor of merit raises for school teachers. He's in favor of pre-K classes. He's in favor of extending the school day to 5 o'clock. In the afternoon. It sounded to me like he was running for the local school board, or he was interviewing to become the superintendent of schools in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Where in the Constitution, and are those of us in this room and watching us now the only people that ask this, does the federal government have anything whatsoever to say or do about local education, public education?
I agree with you. It's nowhere in the Constitution, and the federal government should have no involvement with it. My dad actually was a Reagan appointee at the Department of Education, and he was one of those people originally brought in to shut down the Department of Education. And without going into too much detail, he has stories that are incredibly, I guess they would be incredibly funny if it wasn't so horrible, the abuse of our tax dollars and the abuse of the system that goes on at the Department of Education.
In the speech he gave yesterday, Tracy Barnes, he talked about a very small amount of money, another $100 billion for local education. What kind of strings do you think he wants to attach to that? And where are they going to get these bonds? At some point, is somebody in the Chinese government going to say, enough is enough?
But see, the crowd doesn't care. The crowd goes wild when they hear that kind of stuff.
Yes, they do.
This is political posturing at its best, and he, I have to say, is genius at it. This is how he got his votes. This is how everyone is going to keep their votes. Keep saying things that are important. My brother's a doctor in South Chicago. He thinks everyone is just sitting there waiting. They're not working. They're not looking for a job. They expect Obama to just show up at their doorstep and hand them a wad of money. It's promoting apathy in this country because he's telling everyone he's going to hand them what they need.
Yeah, listen, meanwhile, for all the government involvement in education, our educational system is probably in as worse shape as it's ever been. Our test scores are lower. It costs you a fortune now to go to college. A college degree is probably no more than a glorified high school degree now. People have master's degrees basically in nothing. Yeah. I mean, it's costing people $250,000 to get a college degree, and they don't know how to do anything. When they get out, all they have is a pile of debt, courtesy of the government.
Well, they can work for the government.
They can work for the government, and they don't need an education. My good friend from Princeton University, the very well-known and highly regarded John Stossel, who I thought was going to be here in the room with us but had other commitments, managed to call us on the phone. Is Stossel with us?
I am.
John?
Andrew, I'm sorry I'm late.
No.
I'm doing this special for Friday.